And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Saturday, January 25th, 2025. And this outlook will be for Sunday into Monday. We're starting out, though, this Saturday. An area of low pressure in the North Pacific is going to take its sweet time lifting eastward. And we'll be crossing the Alaska Peninsula on Sunday and then be located here right along between Kuskokwim, Bristol Bays, coming onshore into the southwest interior later Sunday evening. So in all of this process ahead of this low, we have a steady stream of warm, moist air after an unusually strong ridge of high pressure in the North Pacific up to around the Alcan border. That feature's beginning to break down. But this low is taking a track to the north-northeast, and there is some very heavy snowfall in the cold air along essentially a stationary front that cuts across the interior back toward the southwest and then down toward the low. On the backside of the low, strong north winds impacting the eastern Aleutians along with heavy snowfall. Winter storm warnings there in effect, and then blizzard warnings for Kuskokwim Bay up to Bethel, and then trailing northeastward along this back edge of the heavy precipitation. We have some very heavy snowfall. Some locations here, southwest interior, near and just west of McGrath, on up toward Tanana. We're looking at snowfall amounts of easily 1 to 2 feet from this system. Meanwhile, ahead of it, rainfall amounts potentially as much as 3, 4, 5, even isolated 6-inch amounts, especially along the eastern Kenai and around Prince William Sound. And so it's very mild and wet, stronger gusty winds associated with the frontal system that's also within this region. So we find IFR conditions Sunday from areas, the Yukon Flats, all the way down to the southwest coast and into the Aleutians, and then areas extending eastward out into the Panhandle, though still the main focus of the heavier rain will be along the coast here with heavier snow in the intercoastal mountains. That won't really shift eastward a bit until Monday, and by the time it gets into the Panhandle, it will not be as focused or as strong as it has been this weekend in this region. So Sunday afternoon, we still have a band that band of heavier snow is going to pull back toward the north and west a little bit as that low cuts across Bristol Bay Sunday afternoon. That'll be coming onshore in this area Sunday evening. Still a stream. This is that atmospheric river, that stream of warm, moist air coming up into south central on the north side here of the Gulf Coast. Generally MVFR conditions on the Panhandle Sunday. Again, this is the area right here between Yakutat and the eastern Kenai where the focus of that heavier moisture feed will be. And then, of course, along the Alaska Range, we find IFR conditions as well. So Monday, with the low pressure, then Monday morning, the low will be lifting up through the southwest interior here. That moisture gets kind of pulled back a little further north and west, so broad area of IFR conditions along the Beaufort Sea coast, North Slope, Brooks Range down along the west side of the mainland. And then ahead of it, where we still have the relatively milder air, that's going to get pinched off. There's colder air wrapping in around this low, so that's going to force things eastward. That's why we have these IFR conditions early Monday morning pushing into the outer Panhandle, northern Panhandle. That'll be snow up and through the mountains in the northern Panhandle, but the coastal areas, lower cloud cover visibility, ceilings along with rain, and that'll extend back toward Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai, and still up along the Alaska Range. IFR conditions expected there Monday morning, and then on Monday afternoon, that low will continue lifting further northeastward and then weaken. And we'll have a broad area because of that moisture being forced north over the colder air that's wrapping in around the low. Broad area of IFR conditions and, of course, areas of light to occasionally moderate snow across much of the north, including the Brooks Range, North Slope, Chukchi Sea coastline, and the Beaufort Sea. Still IFR conditions, areas of south central Copper River Basin around Prince William Sound and extending into the northern central outer Panhandle. This will be mainly rain in the lower elevation, snow in the intercoastal mountains up against British Columbia. Places like Chilkoot and White Passes, the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains, as you get up there, that's going to be snow. But there is much colder air going to wrap in around this system. In fact, it'll take a moment. It's actually going to be delayed by a day or so because of the fact the low took a track like this, and then it's going to gradually weaken and head eastward. But eventually, through the course of the week, especially early to midweek, some Arctic air is going to come across the mainland, turning things quite a bit colder than what they have been with the push of this particular system. So passes on Sunday, Anaktuvik Pass, MVFR becoming VFR, especially more in the way of VFR conditions there on the north entrance and into the north slope. Adigan Pass, MVFR becoming VFR as well. Lake Clark and Merrill, it's going to be stuck in IFR conditions, low ceilings, low visibilities, and precipitation, rain lower areas, snow higher up. Rainy Pass, same thing, IFR there Sunday. Windy Pass, IFR conditions as well. Isabel Pass, IFR, and then as we get toward Mentasta Pass, the pass itself, VFR becoming MVFR. In the southern part, as you fly south of the south entrance, Mentasta Pass, you'll encounter MVFR conditions becoming IFR there in the Copper River Basin. Tanita Pass should generally hold on to IFR conditions on Sunday, and then back toward Portage Pass, also generally IFR conditions. There might be a bit of an interval of MVFR conditions along the west entrance Sunday afternoon, evening, but that would be the exception. Chilkoot and White looking to be IFR Sunday morning, becoming MVFR. And it kind of tells a story here. We've had a push of warmer air come north and eastward this weekend, Sunday morning. So we have the low, slowly, it's occluding. The low is, in other words, the colder air will be catching up and overriding the warmer air, but ahead of it, it's allowed for a lot of warm air, moist air at that, being forced north and northeastward. So we have a couple of intrusions of higher freezing levels aloft, indicating that warmer air mass that's out ahead of this low. So the main low for this weekend storm is going to come up like this and move into the southwest interior Sunday night. Ahead of it, we have freezing levels above 6,000 feet over the northern part of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Out over into the Gulf, freezing levels as high as 6 to near 8,000 feet there in the lower Gulf. And then as we get west, or I should say eastward, southern parts of the Yukon, we have freezing levels aloft as high as 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet there toward central Canada and coming down across Haida Gwaii. So this has been a pretty healthy push of warmer and definitely high water content air. The Arctic air to the west will begin to wrap in behind that low, especially as we get into Monday. So we find icing, widespread moderate icing, and I would say even probably severe in areas here along what we call a deformation zone, where the heavier precipitation, this arc, has set up, and generally above 4,000 feet here throughout the western southwest interior. Above 8,000 feet along the Gulf Coast, again, mainly rain at the coast. You get up into the mountains, yes, snow, but you get above 8,000 feet, especially warmer air aloft, so it takes a moment to develop that icing. And then above 6,000 feet as you trail further southwestward from, say, Kodiak Island, especially back across the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians. And looking at the jet stream pattern, we talked about this anticyclonically curved jet core. The strongest section of it here is in the lower Gulf, 130 knot southwest winds. Also up here in northern Canada, 125 knot northwest winds. This is at 30,000 feet. Bring it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars. Look at this broad belt of very strong winds, 50 to 75 knots extending from the North Pacific up into the western half of the Gulf, into the southern mainland, up to along the Alaska range. Another reason why there's high wind warnings for areas of the Alaska range. And then when we put it down to 3,000 feet, we find still a pretty strong core of winds rotating around the south-southeast quadrant of the low that'll be lifting up there through Bristol Bay and entering the southwest coast by Sunday evening. Winds could be as high as 50 to 70 knots there, especially as you get southeast of Sand Point and east of Chiknik. And then up along, because of the fronts and just the way that those winds butt up against the intercoastal mountains here, outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, we could see winds 50, 70 knots there at 3,000 feet. So this translates to a lot of turbulence still going on here for Sunday across southern half of the state and all of the Alaska Peninsula back through the Aleutians. We're looking for pockets of potentially severe turbulence there. Northern Gulf along and just outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, perhaps even into Turnagain Arm. Areas near Lake Iliamna extending back toward Wood-Tikchik Park, higher terrain there. And then areas on the south side of Kodiak Island to, say, east of Chiknik. In this area, we expect also the potential for moderate to severe turbulence, surface to 6,000 feet with low-level wind shear. And then around the Alaska range, we'll have strong winds flowing through the gaps along the ridge line, so easily moderate turbulence there, surface to at least 10, if not 12,000 feet. And then we find moderate turbulence extending back out along the Aleutians. And also here over the eastern Bering, the northerly flow that's setting up on the backside of this low will be some brisk north winds. It's also going to develop areas of heavy to even extreme freezing spray as that cold air comes down across the southeast Bering Sunday into Monday. So that kind of lays out what we have coming up here. Again, colder air will gradually push its way across the mainland next week.